Yeah. All right. See who is all on here in a moment. Hey, how do we go from 3 to 1? Somebody else just joined. And I'm going to publish this also on the website as well, so people can join that way. Good. I got Brandon here. So we need Lillian, and we need Danny, and we had almost 7 and 8 people, between 7 and 8 people last time. So now we're gonna need a few more. Just this real quick. Did hear from a couple of new students too, and reaching out to everybody. I got a few text messages. Sorry, I'm just waiting to see if anyone else is going to join. Okay. Might even have to reach out to, well, I'll see if these other people. There you go. Just got a message. Oh, okay. Just got a message about the website. If you have not visited the website to do your attendance, please do so now. I'm actually going to send that out to someone who just asked me for the link. Okay. And if you're on it, please send things in the chat. That's how I give you credit. That's how I know who's on here because everything is tracked. I purposely use YouTube because it lets me know how many people are on here. And that's what we can use to show the state that people participating in these programs and that they're essential. Um, because if not, they can cut funding and it can put us in a bad spot. So there we go. Good. Oh, Coral, I haven't seen you in a while. All right, perfect. We got more people on. Okay. I'm sure more and more people will trickle in. So when we last left off, we were talking about large works versus small works. And the purpose of this is to figure out what how we're going to capitalize something. I'm sorry, how we're going to punctuate something when we're writing. And you're going to get questions like this that are going to be one or two sentences long that are going to ask you to find the error. This is a very common way to have an error. We also talked about mints, right? In fact, to see the people that were here, and this will help out the people who just joined us, please send in the live chat what mints stands for and what it's used for. So, actually, what does mints stand for? Why do we use it? All right, go ahead and send me a message in the live chat. What is mints? What do we use it for? And we have some people that just joined us. So again, I should be hearing from a few of you. What is mints? What does it stand for? There we go. Yep, and I know some of you guys just joined us. So for those of you who joined us, that's why I'm having the students that were here earlier um, send that out. Good. So yes, it is to capitalize, and I want you to tell me every section, right? Because this is what you're going to do when you test. So tell me what each. It's an acronym. So tell me what each letter stands for. So far, I've only heard from LD. I haven't heard from Brandy as of yet. Oh, I've seen that. Yep, it's a capitalized. And what does each letter stand for? Yep, saw LD. Still haven't seen a response from Brandy. All right, we got Lillian joined us. There we go. Okay. So for those of you that are just joining us, so yes, it's going to be months, days, holidays. The I is the pronoun I. N is for names, people or characters, and the T is going to be the title of something, the official title of anything. All right, and then S to be the start of a sentence. Okay, perfect. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about now are going to be how to use a couple of different commas, because one of the things that I know people struggled with on the essay is the fact that all of their sentences are very simple. All right, so I'm going to talk to you about what a simple sentence is and what a complex sentence is. And I'm going to give you a couple of tools to be able to use. Even if this eats up all of our time and we don't get to jump into the math, that's fine because we, like I said, pretty much took all the time for math last time. So this will kind of let us do both. And I haven't. Oh wait, yeah, Danny's one is in Mexico. Okay. I did know. Oh yeah, you know what? She'd probably not be able to join this. Okay. All right. So so a sentence, and this is something that you're going to see a lot of this in reading, where there is colloquial terms, words that we use, and then there's going to be the actual definition of it, what it is known as in reading. Okay, and this is going to be known. A sentence in the world of education is known as an independent clause. That's the scholarly term. An independent clause. So if you're testing and you see that term, independent clause is just a fancy way of saying a sentence. It's literally the same thing. And if you're asking yourself, what's a sentence? Okay. A sentence is a subject and a verb. That's it. Just a subject and a verb. Some of you might think of it as a complete thought, but I don't like doing that because sometimes the way that we talk to each other is not grammatically correct. So I wouldn't always rely on that, because if you're reading something and it sounds like something you would say, that doesn't mean it's a complete sentence. Look for the subject, right? Who are they talking about? And then look for the verb, the action. Okay. So the subject and the verb. That is the bare minimum of what you need to have a sentence. Now, obviously, there's going to be mistakes and there's going to be sentences that are not complete, that are not, right? So, an incomplete sentence, and there's a bunch of these, there's run ons, there's fragments, right? Oh, can't even spell. What did I say? Right? So, an incomplete sentence is known as a dependent clause. A dependent clause. That means you need something else for it to actually be a sentence. It's depending, right? So it's either or either, however you want to pronounce that, a subject or a verb, but not both. Right? That's why a run-on sentence where there's no period and you just keep talking, that's not a complete sentence because the subject or the verb is not obvious. Like we don't know exactly who you're talking about. All right. Or we don't know exactly what you're doing. There's no reasonable end that makes the reader understand that there's a simple subject and a simple verb. So at the very core, at the very essence of writing, this is what is known as a simple sentence. One subject, one verb, right? So you could say, I went to the store, right? Let's look at that. I'm going to erase this. Any questions before I do so? Yep, I'm going to erase it. Okay. So if I said I went to the store, I'm going to break this sentence down for you. Okay. I is a pronoun, right? A noun describes a person, place, or thing. And who is the person? Me. And because I am talking about myself, that's a proper noun. That's what pronoun stands for, proper noun. All right. Went. All right. This is going to be the verb. And actually, we can actually have a whole diagram to break this down, but we're not going to hit on all that today, just because of time. All right. I went to the store. Okay. The is an article adjective. It lets us know what we're talking about. Like, it lets us actually know that we're going to be describing something, right? So the is the, a, and those are all article adjectives. They set up what we're describing, okay? The store, right? This is a simple sentence. What I've seen students get in trouble with when they're testing is that they write a whole essay like this, right? Very simple subject, very simple verb. Let's say you want to talk about what you did when you went to the store. A lot of times, students will then have another sentence, right? So I went to the store. I bought eggs and bacon. Again, these are not going to be capitalized because it's a common noun. We're just talking about any kind of egg, any kind of bacon. Now, if I said I bought Canadian bacon, if I said I bought organic, free range chicken eggs or something like that, then I would have to capitalize all of the official titles. Okay. These are two simple sentences. If your essay contains nothing but very simple sentences, that's where you start to lose points and that's where you get yourself in trouble. So that's why we have commas and we have semicolons. So when we talk about the commas and semicolons today, that should improve your writing. So when we write, I'm going to look for that, whether it be in the live chat or class kick, whatever resource we use. And it should also help you again with the punctuation questions when they're asking you to find the error in the sentence. So before I move on, are there any questions about all of this? This is two simple sentences. I'm going to show you how I can make this into one sentence and how it's going to go from simple to complex. Any questions? And if you notice that you're sending me something in the chat and I'm not responding or I don't see it, again, feel free to shoot me a text, shoot me an email. All right, this is going to be very important. This is going to be important for the essay portion of the test, and you're going to get a lot of multiple choice questions on what is the error in this sentence, or find the punctuation error. All right. So this is going to be important for reading and writing simultaneously. Okay. So please ask. Don't just listen to my voice and follow along. All right. Moving on. Okay. So a complex sentence is where I'm talking about multiple things at once, multiple subjects, multiple verbs. And this is how you show that you have mastered writing, because you can take what an uneducated person would need 3 sentences to do, you're able to do with 1 sentence. And here's what I mean. So the first thing we're going to talk about is commas in a series. This is going to be helpful for the essay because they're probably going to make you write an argumentative essay. They're going to give you a reason, like the classic one, the tired essay question that you're going to see till the day you die is, should we have cell phones in school? They're going to give you a bunch of reasons of why we shouldn't, a bunch of reasons why we should. You need to pick a side and write. So the comma I'm going to show you is powerful for either your thesis, like what your whole essay is going to be about, or when you're trying to give multiple reasons for why you believe whatever you believe. All right. So this is known as commas in a series. We're going to utilize that to combine the two sentences that we wrote earlier. Give you a second to write that down. Any questions? Now, if you're on the street, you want to sound cool in front of your friends, you can also call this an Oxford comma. All right. Is that going to be helpful? No, but if you want to sound cool, you want to sound scholarly, you want to sound like a scholarly person, call it an Oxford comma. People will think you're cool. So there's a couple of rules with the commas in the series. You need at least 3 things in your list, otherwise known as series. You need at least 3 things. Okay. So I'm going to be adding on to the sentences I gave you earlier, but you kind of get the drift. All right. You're going to need 3 things. Now, if you're asking yourself, well, how do we separate it? I'm going to show you a simple rule. Now, I'm going to write out the sentence using commas in a series, and then we're going to go back and I'm going to show you how I know where to put the comma, how I know how to structure my sentence. This will be helpful no matter what you're writing about, whether it's yourself and it's like a narrative, or if you're writing an argumentative essay and you're just trying to give reasons to prove what you're saying, right? So I went to the store and I bought eggs, right? Comma, bacon, and cheese. Okay. I went to the store and I bought eggs, bacon, and cheese. Now, this structure here is a complex sentence. This sentence is complex. Multiple verbs. So it's not a simple sentence. This is what's known as a complex sentence. Okay. Now, you can use this anytime you're talking about more than two things. Okay. And here's the rule. So you're going to set everything up. As soon as you're going to set up your list, easiest thing to follow, put two things in your list separated by a comma, and then you need to use a conjunction. A conjunction. Conjunctions bring sentences together. And if you notice, I always do a hand gesture, or I try to speak with my hands and use a hand gesture because, again, when you test, it's going to be for days. And the more tools you have while you're testing, meaning if you know that this means bringing together, and we're talking about conjunctions, you're more likely to remember the information and understand the information. All right. So wherever you are as you're watching this, it's on that you guys explaining things to each other is actually more beneficial than anything I can teach you. And that's not my opinion, that those are facts. That's why in education we use Kagan structures and all kinds of things. So we want to use as many senses as possible when we're doing something, and we want to communicate with each other. That's why I don't like to lecture and just talk the entire time. I want you guys to be talking, sending messages so that I know we're all engaged and we can learn from each other. Now, you might be telling yourself, well, what if the word and is not appropriate for what I'm trying to say? Like, I can't use it. I'm going to give you all of the conjunctions you're going to need for the test. Okay. And what you're going to use is what is known as fanboys. Fanboys. All of these are used to bring sentences together. The F stands for, the A stands for and, the N stands for nor, the B stands for but, O stands for or, Y stands for yet, S stands for so. Just got a message. Okay. So, for, I'm pretty sure everybody knows when they're talking or they've probably have written the word for. Um, you're probably not going to use, well, this would probably be one of the more common ones. Obviously, not as common as and. If you have a list, and it's probably going to be the conjunction you're going to use. And right before the conjunction, you always want to include a comma. All right. That's the other part of the rule. Right before the conjunction, you're going to include a comma. Always do that. Okay. So if you went to the mechanic and they're telling you things that you need to buy for your car to work, I'm going to put a comma before the word for. So if they say, for your car to run smoothly, you need new brakes, an alternator, and a brand new engine for your car to work, right? Or new brakes, tires, um, new brakes, tires, engine for your car to work. I need to use a conjunction to signal the end of my list. All right. So for is probably the second most common. And is the one you're going to use pretty much every single time. But if you know the other ones, then you will have that when they're asking you to fix misspellings, and you'll have that in case and for whatever reason is not going to be helpful. Nor. Nor is a way of saying not. And I don't recommend using a lot of it, nor, because you want to stick with things you're comfortable with. And I would say most of you are probably going to be comfortable with and. But nor is going to be used when you do not want something, right? So go back to the mechanic example. So if we're talking about things that you are not willing to pay for, right? You might say something like, I'm not willing to pay for the brakes, the tires, nor the new engine. And that's the purpose behind this conjunction. So you're bringing these things together and you're letting the person know that you don't want anything on the list. Again, I would probably, in testing, since this is going to be hours long, I would probably just stick with saying and, but that's another tool. But is when you're going to contradict yourself, right? So if you were to say, well, the new engine and tires sound good, but I won't pay for the alternator, right? Same thing. Anytime you use any of these, you have to have the comma before it. That's a tool, especially again, it's going to be useful when you're talking about a list of things. Or pretty straightforward. It's when you're letting people know you want something and you're okay with a range of things, right? Yet is a fancy way to say but. It's the same thing. And then so is a fancy way of saying for. All right, I know I just spoke for a while. Let me know in the comments or in the live chat if you have any questions, and I'll give everybody a chance to write this down. Correct. Good, Lillian. Yes. So if you're trying to, if you're writing an argumentative essay, you're going to see but. And that's what you should be using. So someone, if you're of the mindset that we should not have cell phones in school, then you would list all the reasons, right? But, and you're going to go against what you just said, right? That could be a way to destroy someone's argument, give multiple reasons why, right? Very good. I'll let you guys write that down. No questions? Huh. Okay. So to make sure we're all still here and paying attention, in the live chat, I would like you to use commas in a series. Create your own sentence using commas in a series. Okay. So you know what? I like that sentence. Throw in one more thing. Live education aspect. So throw in work keys. Love that example. And then I want you to show me how you would use commas in the series. Good. Now, in the other example, I like English, reading, and sometimes math. So if we're talking about subjects, all of that would have to be capitalized because that's the official title of the class, right? So I like that sentence. Let's look at some of the ones that I've got in the comment section. Okay. So I'm going to take two sentences. All right. So I like English, and that's because it's the actual title of the class, right? And it's an actual language, is the official title of the language. That's all right. That's why we do this. That's why I always recommend writing down mints so that it's easy to remember, right? So I like English, same thing, reading. Now, remember, you have that conjunction and. So right before the and, right before the conjunction, you have to have a comma, right? So I like English, reading, and sometimes math. And actually, if we're talking about classes, math would also be capitalized. Because if you're talking about our classes, like what we're doing. So this would be an example. Because what would happen is if someone is not a scholarly writer, they would actually write this in three sentences. I like reading, period. I like English, period. I sometimes like math, period. And that's what we want to get away from, right? So this is good. So those are the only adjustments I would make there and the comma. So just always ask yourself, is this the actual title of something or am I talking about something in general? Okay. Um, it'll be pretty easy when you test because everything will always be pretty black and white. If you have to write an essay on cell phones in school or something like that, they're going to cite studies that you can reference to by name and you know they're going to be capitalized because the study was done either by a college or by a company and it'll be pretty straightforward. I've only seen them try to trick you with things like I went to the pet store and the name of the pet store is pet store or something stupid like that, but normally it's going to be pretty black and white because the goal isn't to trick you, it's really to see what you know. And that may sound like it's the same thing, but it's not, because it's not, oh, let me ask a question that would be hard for people to understand because it's purposely written poorly. Perfect. Now, so I saw another sentence today, and let's see if we can find um, what we need to change, right? Today, we could put a comma there. We're not going to do it this time. Today, let's switch this up. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so remember, mints, 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 mints. Anytime that we're writing, always go back to mints, and then you'll know that the I has to be capitalized. I kind of gave it away. I try to catch myself in the middle of correcting it. All right. Mints, 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 mints. And again, that's one of the first things I do when I test. First thing I'm going to write down is things like race. So I remember how to answer text-dependent questions. Then I'm going to write down mints. Anytime I write a sentence, I'm going to go back to that. Am I talking about a month? Am I talking about myself? Am I talking about any kind of a name? Is this the actual title of anything? Did I start the sentence of a capital letter? All right. Okay, good. And a comma before and. There we go. Good. Somebody caught that. Race stands for, let me write this up real quick. If they ask you to answer a question, this is to help you with a text-dependent question, and this is what is known as a constructed response. So they might say something like, "Tell or please explain how the main character in the movie The Purge changed," right? Or what did he change into? Some kind of question like that. Or how do you know the wolf is evil in the story of the Three Little Pigs? That's a constructed response. No, you always need one before and. Yes, it's a conjunction. Anytime before a conjunction, you need to put a comma. That's how you signal to the reader that there's a pause, right? So anytime that you have a conjunction, you should have a comma. Are you going to see people not doing that in books and things like that? Yes. Unlike math, this is why I think reading is harder. Reading is very fluid. And just like people can make movies and not be in reality and things like that to be cool and artsy, people will do the same thing with breaking rules and reading. But we should always have a comma before the conjunction. It's scholarly. Correct. When you're listing things that are three or more, correct. Because comma is supposed to be like a stop. It's supposed to be a break. Commas chop sentences up. So when you're saying, I went to the store and bought laundry detergent, shoes, and soap, whatever, you're supposed to pause. That's what the comma's for. So you're listing things out and you're pausing so that the person reading can understand what you're saying. So there wouldn't be a need to put a comma when we have two things because we don't have a list. So one of the few rules is that when we're talking about commas in a series, we really need three things. If not, then a conjunction like and would be good for two things, no comma. When it's three things or more, then we need to use a comma right before the conjunction to signal a break. Race is for text dependent questions. The R stands for restating. You need to restate the question so you can address it directly. The A stands for answer the question. The C stands for cite. And this is very important. The magical sentence for citing is according to the text. According to the text. Okay. Always cite. Always cite. That's why they like to give you argumentative essays or informative essays. They want to see that you can reference back to something that proves whatever you're trying to say. You're going to see a lot of that according to the text. You'll probably see it on the test in the directions, according to the text. And I would say for most of you, that's going to be easy because I'm sure most of you have held a job at one point or not, or one point or the other in your life. And you know that there's company policy. So sometimes a company policy may not make sense to people. Like, hey, if the, you know, ice cream machine is down at McDonald's, according to company policy, then we can't give you ice cream, even if it's only broken for chocolate or something, right? According to company policy, if it's broken for one thing, it's broken for everything, right? And you say that so that you know where it's coming from, right? Just like if you're a leader, you're a supervisor, you're a manager, it's the same thing. And you know someone's lying to you, right? Hey, I showed up to work on time and you found out they were 30 minutes late. Then, well, you're writing them up. What are you going to say? According to what you said, right? You were on time. Well, it turns out that the time sheet said something different, right? According to the timesheet, you're late, right? So this is where we're getting to build that. This is the most important part of the whole thing, according to the text. E is explain or expand. All right. That means that you're going to say something like, this shows, this is why I believe. You're probably not going to have a whole bunch of text dependent questions, but you will have some text dependent constructed response questions, right? Always remember, restate the question, answer it, cite it, explain, right? So if the question was, how do we know the wolf is evil in the story of the three little pigs? I know the wolf is evil in the story of the three little pigs because he's always blowing the pigs' houses down. According to the text, the wolf would say, I'm going to huff, I'm going to puff, and I'm going to blow your house down. This shows that the wolf is evil in the story of the three little pigs. You're going to have some questions that are just like that. They're going to depend on the text, and you have to come up with a response. If you're wondering how to answer them, go back to race. A little bit of a review on that one, but questions about that? No problem. Questions? Now, again, I love doing this. I actually hate being stuck in the house, and this is actually very rewarding for me. Love engaging with you guys, and makes me feel like I'm actually working. How do you restate? So use as many words from the question as possible in your answer, right? So if the question is, how do you know the wolf? And we're going to capitalize it because we're assuming that's the wolf's name. That's a little tricky, but we're going to go with that. The wolf is the actual name. Why did I underline that? Because it's a large work. It's a whole book. So if this was the question, right? And there's supposed to be a question mark there. Kind of ran out of space. Okay. So if I need to restate, I need to use as many words from the question as possible. Okay. I need to use as many words from the question as possible. So I need to say, I know the wolf is evil, right? It's the title of a book, correct. I'm going to actually send you guys I'm going to show you how to quote. I just got a question about quoting. I'm going to actually post in the live chat a link to an anchor chart that's going to give you 3 simple ways to quote. You should really stick with one, but if you want to be fancy, there's going to be 2 others. I always believe in very simple ways to do things. And this is going to refer to everything as a tag. Tag A, tag B, tag C. I would recommend just using tag A. All right, because you should only really be quoting one person at a time, or so the other ones, they're cute, but again, I don't recommend it. You'll see it in the top. Well, when I post this, you're going to see in the top corner uh, where it says tag A, tag B, tag C. Oh, won't let me. Okay. Looks like it's too big. Wonder if it'll let me just do a screenshot. Correct. Anytime that you have a question, just take as many words out of that question when you're answering it. Like, where did you go last night? Last night I went to, right? Or what time did you get to the party? Oh, I got to the party at. So you want to use as many words from it as possible. It's not letting me send it out. I'll email it, but I'm going to show you some of the ways. The easiest way to quote. So you will be doing a lot of quoting in your essay. All right. That's pretty much the only time you're really going to be using quotes. The only other time you're going to see quotes is on the find the punctuation error in the sentence questions. Okay. So actually, you know what? The easiest way is going to be form B. B is going to be the easiest. So you start off with whoever was talking. So let's just say it's going to be Tyrone. Now, you know what? No, not Tyrone. Let's say Pancho. All right. So you're going to use whoever the name of the person is. So if you want to say that the wolf, you want to quote the wolf, you would write wolf, right? So whatever the name is, right? And then you need to know, you need to let the person reading know that they're about to say something. So you need to say Pancho. You can say something like said, right? Then we have to have a comma because there's a pause. There has to be a pause. So here, you're going to have the name. And then here, the fact that they said something. You don't have to always say said. You can say commented, yelled, screamed, barked, right? If you're not going to be quoting, then if you're not going to be quoting a lot, stick with said. If you're writing an argumentative essay and there's multiple studies, multiple things you're trying to quote, then try to switch it up. Don't just keep saying said, commented, remarked, use those type of identifiers, like to say that someone is speaking. All right. You will be quoting people. That's probably going to be helpful for your essay. Okay. So, Pancho said, everything now needs to be in quotation marks, right? Quotes are tricky. All right, period. Okay. And you want to make sure that everything in the quotes is a brand new sentence. That's why it's capitalized. It's a brand new sentence. This is probably the easiest to use when we're talking about people. Questions about that? Okay. Now, you will probably be citing a study or something else to prove what you're trying to say. And this is where I'm going to show you how to quote directly from the text. I wouldn't recommend doing this a lot. I would just paraphrase, like restate what was already in the book, because you don't want to make things harder for yourself. But if you really do want to quote something straight from the book, use the character. If you want to quote a line from the book, we're pretty much going to follow the exact same thing, right? So if I want to say that cell phones are bad in school, right, I can say, according to the text, right? And I'm going to do the exact same thing, comma, and then everything is going to be in quotation marks if it is exactly what was said in the text, right? Oh, I know you were, right? That's good. All right. So you would say according to the text, right? And let's say you want to say, according to the text, 80. Let's just say, let's make it something easier than that. According to the text, 70% of students use a cell phone to cheat. Yes, use the quotation marks if it's verbatim. Now, I would recommend, again, because the test is long, I would recommend paraphrasing. But again, it is more scholarly to quote directly, verbatim. I would recommend doing that if you're trying to go above. And the only reason I could see somebody trying to do that is if you're throwing in a couple of commas and you're throwing in a couple of direct quotes, it's okay if everything else that you write is a very simple sentence, right? Cell phones are bad for students, right? It's okay if your sentences are like that as long as you're throwing in evidence and the commas that we're talking about. Because what that shows the person reading it who has to correct it by hand that you have mastered writing, that you know how to use complex sentences, right? And you know how to use things like commas and semicolons, and you know how to use evidence. So they're going to forgive you if there's a lot of other very simple sentences because you gave them something complex. So I always recommend trying to throw these in there, quote something, or go back to according to the text, use a comma, show the person reading that you are very capable of creating complex sentences. Yeah, no problem. All right. Any questions on that? We're going to jump right back into commas for the last 10 minutes. All right. So now, okay. So when you're looking at a semicolon is combining two sentences. It's kind of like, I don't know if anyone here is from California. Think of it as like a California stop where you see a stop sign and you're not actually stopping, you just kind of slow down and you go through. That's what a semicolon does. So you're going to use a semicolon to bring two sentences together that are complete sentences. Like, for example, I went to the store. I could have two sentences. I went to the store. I bought milk there. Two separate sentences. Well, I don't have to do that. They're both related, right? So I could actually use a semicolon. I went to the store, semicolon. I bought milk. I bought milk there. Right. So that's what a semicolon is for. Colons are going to be used mostly like when you're about to introduce a list. I would recommend using commas and semicolons rather than the colons. Yes, you could think of it that way. It's basically combining sentences, you know? Okay, and I'll give you some more examples. So you could also use these, and the most common way you're going to see this, and this is probably going to come up more as an error on the test than it is going to come up as fixed sentence punctuation type question than it is a question on its own. So you're going to see something like, I have lived in Las Vegas, comma, Nevada. And I'm going to use a semicolon because I'm going to talk about more places that are going to have commas. Houston, comma, Texas. Another semicolon. Atlanta, comma, Georgia. Right? And let's just leave it there. And then you could also say something like, comma, and Utah. So I could also use a semicolon here because it would be confusing to have commas in between there. So I could separate this with a semicolon. I don't see most people when they're writing their essays using that, but I do see this coming up as a fix a sentence question. Where I would see you using a semicolon, if there's no questions on this, I'm going to erase it. I like to give you guys very simple tools so that we can test. Get in there and test, especially now. We need it more than ever. Well, you can also use a semicolon for, because remember, a semicolon is a period and also a comma. You can use it for a list within a list. And here's what I mean by that. I need a calculator for English. A computer for science. Three notebooks for reading. This is probably where you're going to use semicolons the most when we're talking about a list within a list. Okay. Why? Because all of this are things that I need for school. So I'm not going to use an Oxford comma or commas in a series because for commas in a series, I'm talking about three things and they're usually different. They're relating to a very simple list and they're three things that are very straightforward, right? Eggs, milk, bacon, right? Now, when I have a whole list, like things that I need for the party, what I need for school, well, all of these things are going to be more than just one item, right? It's a list within a list. So here's my list for the party. Here's my list for the things I need for school. So because it's a list within, so it's a list of things I need for school for the list of school, pretty much, right? So when you're doing that, you're going to want to use semicolons. They're all talking about the same thing and you're listing it. So if I was talking about a party, I would do the same thing because I could say, well, this is a list of things that I need for the party. And within the things I need for the party, there's little lists attached to it, right? So you might need to get tables for the DJ, drinks for the guest, and a speaker for the host or something like that, right? So those are all lists, and you're proving that you are a scholarly writer because you're combining all of them with a semicolon. So you can show, hey, most people that are not expert writers, they're going to make this into three separate sentences. I am scholarly enough to say I recognize this as a list within a list of things. So I'm going to use a semicolon. And that's more appropriate than a comma because a comma is usually going to be singular things, three or four singular things. The minute the list becomes complex and it's a list within a list, a semicolon would be appropriate. This is probably the way you're going to use semicolon the most. Questions about that? Got it. So there are no questions about that. I will propose something to everyone. If I know that I was reaching out to people and it looks like it worked out, we're up to seven. Um, if you have, if you would like to continue, and I can push on past 12 and I can talk about the commas, then let me know. If not, we can end it now and we will pick up with the two-step equations tomorrow, two variable equations tomorrow, and then talk about commas. And then we'll move on from there. So let me know in the live chat whether you would like to stop or continue. All right. Perfect. So we will pick up on this tomorrow. Again, if you have any questions, you already know the multiple ways to get a hold of me. I'm going to be putting this back on the website. All the videos that I've ever made are on there. So we had three. Okay. If you have if you have a question, I can definitely keep going. Those of you who can't stay, definitely understand. This video will be posted on the website just along with everything else that we've done so that you can use it as a refresher. Okay, so I got three saying that they would like to pick up tomorrow. I got two saying to continue. Okay, so I will talk about a few more commas. It'll be on the video. If you can't continue, because I understand that you probably have other things to do, then let me know. Okay, so I'll do two more commas and then we'll finish up there. All right. Got And while I'm writing this up, please make sure that you clock out on the website. Again, that goes directly to Claudia, that goes directly to Dave and Miss Belkis. Those are my superiors at CSN. And it lets them know that people are participating. And then hopefully we can just continue the class and pass the original deadline so that when we're done, my goal is for every single one of you guys to take the test. So. Go. So we talked about commas in a series. Um, Someone just sent me a message. I can see the work. Okay. So the other comma that you're going to use, and this one's going to be pretty simple. This one I think you will be using a lot of when you're trying to describe something and you don't want to use five sentences to do that. So you can use what's known as separating the important from the unimportant. Unlike math, where there's like hardcore rules and everything has an actual name and a theorem and a formula, reading isn't like that. There is no actual name for this comma. There's about 20 commas, give or take. This one has no name. So it's just separating the important from the unimportant. All right. So, okay. So let's say I were to say, my grandmother, not going to capitalize grandmother because I'm talking about my grandmother, but obviously that's not her name. It's not the official title, so I don't need to capitalize anything. All right, so my grandmother who smoked crack for 30 years lived to be 90 years old. All right. Now, these two commas are here because, okay, I see people are listening. Okay, good. So, on purpose, you wanted to be funny. All right. So, I don't need to know that she smoked crack for 90 years. Okay. That's actually not relevant. Okay. In fact, the only thing that people need to know is that my grandmother lived to be 90 years old. All right. So this is an example. This is an example of separating the importance from the unimportant. So if you want to use this comma, introduce whatever you're going to talk about and all the details that are unnecessary to form a sentence, you can put in between a comma. As long as when you remove everything between the commas, you still have a complete sentence, right? So my grandmother lived to be 90 years old. That's a complete sentence. I don't need to know that she smoked crack. Okay. So you can use that anytime that you're describing something and you understand that, for example, if we're talking about the Empire State Building and you're giving us facts and figures about when it was built, how much it costs, but at the end you're just saying it's in New York, well, all those other details can be separated by commas. Okay. So when you do that, it lets the person know that this is the complete sentence. Again, this is a way to fix a run on sentence. You might get a couple of questions like, how would you fix this sentence? That's one way to fix it. Put those two commas in to separate the important from the unimportant. It's also helpful for you because now when you're thinking of all these things you want to list to talk about something, think about what you ultimately want to say. All the things you know that are like fluff, extra details, separated with a comma. Questions about that? You could. Yeah, it's just an example, right? So my grandmother who smoked crack. Um, yeah. in between the commas. So from here to here, everything between there is not important. And that's why it's in between the commas. So this and that. This is going to be a very useful comma to use. Again, and I know I'm beating a dead horse, which is figurative language, idiom. You're going to probably write an essay convincing someone of something. Um, and whatever position you take on the cell phones, or I've seen another one on like, should commercials be regulated more or something like that. Whatever position you take, when you know that you want to use a sentence word for word, or you want to use most of that sentence because it gives you some uh, great details, things you really want to use to back it up, paraphrase it and use those two commas, right? And if English isn't your first language, if you're not a strong speller, that's the other advantage of pretty much using all the words from the text, is the fact that if I were to use this and say, well, the Empire State Building was built in 19, I'm making this all up, 1923, and has over 1 million pounds of steel and is located in New York. Well, I could literally just say the Empire State Building is located in New York. So all those other details that I got from the text now are helping me create a complex sentence, and I know nothing is misspelled. So if later on, when I'm trying to say something and I want to be careful with my spelling, I want to be careful to make sure that it makes sense, it won't matter that those sentences are super simple because I already showed I can do otherwise. Any other questions? Go. Moving on. So the next one, and this will be the last one we talk about, and then I'll let you guys go. But now you have all the tools to create complex sentences. In writing, we'll talk about how to structure an essay later on. And when we're talking to each other through the live chat, I definitely want to see these these tools, these punctuation marks, and when we're writing. This one is known as a it's known as an introductory comma. It's known as an introductory comma. One of the few commas that actually has a name. It actually has a name. All right. This one's going to be a little trickier. Okay. So I'm going to give you an example. When the rain passed, comma, we drove to Nevada. Okay, so you see the comma here. What this comma does, it combines an independent clause and a dependent clause. It combines them together in a sentence. Okay, remember that we can't combine them with a semicolon, because to combine them with a semicolon, we need to have two independent clauses, two complete sentences. When we want to combine a fragment or whatever, a sentence that's not complete, whether they be run on, etc., and a complete sentence, we have to use an introductory comma. So here's what I mean. So When the rain passed, is that a complete sentence? Let me know in the live chat. Is this an independent clause? Is this an independent clause or is it a dependent clause? Let me know which one and why. Why? Correct. It is a dependent clause. Good. So because it's a dependent clause, it's dependent on something else. So I have to back that up and separate it with a comma. So because it's dependent, this part has to be a complete sentence. We drove to Nevada. It's not capital because it's not, it is its own sentence, but it's supporting this sentence. So together, we made a whole thought. Okay. We drove to Nevada. That's a complete sentence. We have the subject, we, and the verb, drove. We drove to Nevada. Right? That's a complete sentence. This is an independent clause. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, why do we have that comma? Or how do we know if they're using it? If you can flip the sentence around and it still makes sense, then you are using an introductory comma, right? So let's see. We drove to Nevada when the rain passed. I can flip it. It still makes sense. Why? Because this is dependent. Doesn't really matter where it is. It still depends on this other part of the sentence. So I can flip it. I would recommend using this comma when you're writing because, again, it shows a scholarly knowledge of writing and an easy thing they try to trick you on with what's wrong with this sentence. This is probably the most common. I think I've said that before, but it is. It's one of the most common that you'll see on the writing test. Will be on the fix the punctuation of the sentence. This is going to be a common thing they're going to try to trick you with. They're going to get rid of those commas, and it's not going to sound right. When the rain passed, we drove to Nevada. Well, it sounds like a run-on sentence, and that's because part of it is a sentence, and the other part of it is not. Part of it is an independent clause. The other part is a dependent clause. So one of the things I'm going to push you guys to use when we talk about sentences, use independent clause. The more vocabulary terms we use, the less likely we are to be tricked on the test because they may not call it a sentence. The actual academic term would be a clause, an independent clause, right? A dependent clause. All right. So now to finish up, I would like you to send me in the live chat your own sentence that uses an introductory comma. That's a very good sentence. Wow, very nice. Man, okay. I would have almost thought you would have got that from Google. That's amazing. Outstanding. You guys are smoking this. Okay, so it looks like my job here is done. Okay, so use that anytime that you are writing an essay. Again, try to hit at least two or three commas. Like try to at least use an example of each one that I gave you. Throw a semicolon in there. Then you can rest assured that if all of your other sentences are simple, and then you are writing, you're using like five sentences because you want to be safe with spelling and punctuation, all that just not if you're using five sentences to write something that you could have done with you could have really accomplished using one sentence, it's okay because you already demonstrated to them you know how to use commas, you know how to use semicolons. It's okay if later on those other things are very simple. um, you should not be losing points. So again, everything is geared towards the test. Every single time that I come in for a term, I at least have three or four people pass. 80% of my students show growth on the tape test. And I've been with CSN now going for 2 years. So I'm very competitive. I like to be number one in everything that I do. So I'm happy you guys are with me here during this quarantine. But I definitely want to push everyone to test before the end of this term. That's pretty much all I got for today. Are there any questions? No, no, thank you guys. All right. So if there are no questions, then we will see each other tomorrow. Um, Tomorrow, I'll start the live stream around like 9:30, 10 o'clock, just to give everybody a chance to work on Khan Academy. And then tomorrow is going to be really math intensive because we spent time today with reading. Although we did get some Khan Academy lessons in this, we did get some math time. But tomorrow will be more focused on math than it would be reading. All right, then we will talk tomorrow. Have a great day.